Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lying on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle, let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you'd like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky, with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I pulled into the gravel driveway just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky a bruised purple. The moving truck was already there, parked crookedly in front of the house, my new house. It was old, older than I'd expected from the grainy photos online. The real estate agent had called it charming and full of character, but standing there, staring at the sagging porch and the chipped paint curling off the siding, I wasn't so sure. Still, it was cheap, and after the divorce, cheap was all I could afford. My name's Ellie. I'm 34, newly single, and starting over in a small town called Harrow Creek. I'd taken a job at the local library, nothing glamorous, just shelving books and helping old ladies find their knitting manuals. It was a fresh start, or at least that's what I kept telling myself as I hauled boxes out of my car. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and something sour I couldn't place. Probably just the age of the place, I figured. The house creaked as I stepped inside. The floorboards groaned under my sneakers, and the front door stuck a little when I tried to close it. I gave it a hard shove, and it slammed shut with a thud that echoed through the empty rooms. The movers had already dropped off my stuff. Boxes stacked haphazardly in the living room, my mattress leaning against the wall in the bedroom upstairs. I was too tired to unpack much, so I just dragged the mattress into place, threw some sheets on it, and called it a night. That first night, I noticed the noises. A faint tapping came from somewhere downstairs, like branches brushing against a window, except there weren't any trees close enough to touch the house. Then there was a low hum, almost like the furnace kicking on, but it was summer, and I hadn't even figured out where the thermostat was yet. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old places like this always have quirks, right? The next morning, I met Mrs. Carter. She lived next door in a tidy little bungalow with lace curtains and a garden full of roses. She shuffled over while I was unloading groceries, her cane tapping the ground like a metronome. She was small, hunched, with sharp gray eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You're the new tenant then?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Yeah, just moved in yesterday. I'm Ellie." She nodded, peering past me at the house. "It's been empty a while. Not many stick around long." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Well, I don't scare easy." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You might living there. Last folks who rented it, young couple, nice enough, left in a hurry. Middle of the night even. Said they heard things. Footsteps mostly. Kept going on about curses too, but they were half out of their minds by then." I froze, a bag of canned goods dangling from my hand. Footsteps. Mitchum. Said it sounded like someone pacing upstairs. Never found nothing though. Sheriff thought they'd been drinking. She shrugged like it was no big deal, then turned back toward her house. "You let me know if you need anything here?" I watched her go, her words rattling around in my head. Footsteps. Curses. It was ridiculous, small-town gossip probably. I shook it off and went back to unpacking. The house was mine now, quirks and all, and I wasn't about to let some old lady's ghost stories spook me out of a fresh start. The day passed quietly. I set up the kitchen, hung a few clothes in the closet, and even managed to get the ancient TV in the living room working. By evening, I was exhausted but satisfied. I heated up a frozen pizza, cracked open a beer, and sat on the couch, listening to the house groan and creak around me. The tapping started again, faint and irregular, but I chalked it up to pipes or the wind. Old houses make noise. That's just how it works. I went to bed around 10, the mattress sagging under me as I settled in. The bedroom was small, with slanted ceilings and a single window that rattled faintly in its frame. I was half asleep when I heard it, a heavy thud like someone dropping a book on the floor. It came from downstairs. My eyes snapped open, heart thudding in my chest. I lay there, listening, waiting for it to happen again. Nothing. Just silence, thick and heavy. It's an old house, I told myself. Things shift. Things settle. I rolled over, pulled the blanket tighter, and forced my eyes shut. But sleep didn't come easy that night. Every creak, every sigh of the house felt louder, closer, like it was watching me, waiting. The next few days were a blur of settling in. I started my job at the library, which was quiet and predictable, exactly what I needed after months of chaos. The house, though, kept me on edge. It wasn't anything big at first, just little things that piled up. The floorboards creaked even when I wasn't walking on them. Sometimes I'd catch a whiff of that sour smell again, sharp and fleeting, like something rotting in the walls. And the noises at night didn't stop. Tapping, thuds, a faint scraping sound once that made my skin crawl. I'd lie there in the dark, telling myself it was nothing, but my imagination kept spinning. By the end of the first week, I'd worked out a routine. Wake up at 7, coffee on the porch, drive to the library, home by 5. I'd cook dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta or grilled cheese, and spend the evenings reading or watching TV. The house felt less empty once I got my bookshelves up, but it still didn't feel like mine. It was too big, too old, too full of sounds I couldn't explain. Friday night, I decided to explore a little. The house had 3 floors if you counted the attic, and I hadn't gone beyond the main level in my bedroom yet. The stairs to the second floor were steep and narrow, the wood worn smooth from years of use. There were 2 spare rooms up there, both empty except for dust and cobwebs, and a tiny bathroom with a cracked sink. The air felt heavier on that floor, like it was holding its breath. I didn't stay long. The attic was next. The door was at the end of the hall, a flimsy thing with a rusted knob that stuck when I turned it. I had to shove my shoulder against it to get it open, and when I did, a wave of musty air hit me. The attic was dark, the only light coming from a small, grimy window at the far end. I flicked the switch by the door, but the bulb buzzed and died. Figures. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and went back up. It was a mess up there, boxes of junk, old furniture draped in sheets, a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. I poked around for a bit, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe something to make the place feel less alien. That's when I found the trapdoor. It was in the floor, half hidden under a moth-eaten rug. A small iron ring sat flush with the wood, cold to the touch when I grabbed it. I tugged, and it creaked open, revealing a narrow ladder leading down into darkness. I hesitated. The air coming up from that hole smelled worse than the rest of the house. Damp and sour, with a hint of something metallic. I shone my flashlight down, but the beam didn't reach far. There was a crawl space, maybe, or some kind of storage. My gut told me to leave it alone, but curiosity got the better of me. I'd check it out later, I decided, when I wasn't alone in the house at night. That night, the noises were worse. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound like boots stomping across the floor downstairs. Not creaking, stomping. Heavy, deliberate steps that echoed through the house. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to hear. They stopped as suddenly as they'd started, leaving me in silence again. I didn't move for a long time, just sat there clutching the blanket, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Nothing did. Eventually, I lay back down, telling myself it was a dream or the house playing tricks. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I checked every room, every corner. Nothing was out of place. No footprints, no signs of anyone. Just me in this creaky old house. I ran into Mrs. Carter again that afternoon. She was watering her roses, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I waved and she beckoned me over. "How you holding up over there?" she asked, eyeing me like she already knew the answer. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "It's just noisy. Old houses, you know." She nodded slowly. "Noisy, huh? What kind?" I hesitated, not sure how much to say. "Footsteps mostly. Last night it sounded like someone was walking around downstairs." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not the first to say that. That couple I told you about, they heard it too. Said it got louder the longer they stayed. Started in the walls, then the floors. Never saw a thing though." A chill ran down my spine. "You think it's haunted?" She snorted. "I don't know about that. But that house has a history. First owner was a strange one. Elias Crow his name was. Lived there back in the 20s. Kept to himself mostly, but folks said he was into some dark stuff. Rituals, they called it. Said he built the place to keep something in." I stared at her. "Keep what in?" She shrugged. "Never said. Just rumors. He died there though. Alone. They found him in the attic, stiff as a board. No one's been keen to live there long since." I didn't know what to say to that. Rituals? It sounded like something out of a bad movie. But those footsteps. I thanked her and headed back inside, my mind racing. The house didn't feel charming anymore. It felt like it was hiding something. Work kept me busy the next week, which was a blessing. The library was quiet, the kind of place where you could hear a pin drop, and it gave me a break from the house's constant chatter. I'd come home each night exhausted, hoping I'd sleep through whatever was going on. Most nights I did, but not always. The footsteps came back on Wednesday. I was in bed, drifting off when they started, slow and heavy, pacing across the living room below me. I held my breath, counting the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. They stopped, then started again, faster this time, like someone was agitated. I grabbed my phone, ready to call. Who? The police? And say what? My old house is walking around? I didn't call. I just listened, frozen, until they faded away. When I checked downstairs in the morning, everything was normal. No footprints, no mess. Just that lingering sour smell, stronger now, clinging to the air like damp rot. Friday night it got worse. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I felt it, a cold spot, sharp and sudden, like stepping into a freezer. The hairs on my arms stood up, and I turned, expecting to see an open window. Nothing. The air was still, the windows shut tight. But the cold stayed, pressing against me, heavy and wrong. I backed out of the room, heart hammering, and it followed me, a chill that wouldn't let go until I reached the stairs. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak, every groan of the house felt personal now, like it was testing me. I started leaving the lights on even during the day. It didn't help much, but it made me feel less alone. Saturday, I decided to face the trapdoor. I couldn't ignore it anymore, not after Mrs. Carter's story about Elias Crow, not after the footsteps and the cold. I grabbed my flashlight, a hammer from the toolbox I'd unpacked, and a kitchen knife. Overkill maybe, but I wasn't taking chances. The attic was just as I'd left it, dusty and dim. I pulled the trapdoor open, and that smell hit me again, sour, metallic, thick enough to choke on. The ladder creaked as I climbed down, flashlight beams slicing through the dark. It wasn't a crawl space. It was a room, small and windowless, with rough stone walls and a dirt floor. The air was damp, heavy with that stench. There was a table in the center, wooden and warped, stained dark with something I didn't want to think about. Around it, the floor was marked with chalk, circles and symbols I didn't recognize, faded but still legible. My stomach twisted. Rituals, Mrs. Carter had said. This didn't look like a storage room. It looked like a nightmare. I swept the flashlight around, and that's when I saw it, a small leather-bound book tucked against the wall, half buried in the dirt. I knelt, brushing the soil away, and picked it up. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed and brittle. I opened it, and the first line made my blood run cold. Asterisk, the door is open. It will not close. Asterisk, it was a journal. Elias Crow's journal. The handwriting was jagged, like he'd been in a hurry, and the date started in 1923. I flipped through it, my hands shaking. Entries about summoning, bindings, the shadow that moves. He'd been obsessed, delusional maybe, convinced he could call something up from somewhere. The last entry was dated October 31st, 1927. Asterisk, it's here. Walks the house. I cannot undo it. Asterisk, I dropped the book like it burned me. The air in the room shifted, grew colder, and I swear I heard a sound, a low, guttural hum coming from the walls. I scrambled up the ladder, slammed the trapdoor shut, and ran downstairs. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I locked the attic door and shoved a chair under the knob. That night I didn't sleep. The footsteps were back, louder, closer, pacing right outside my bedroom door. I sat up, clutching the knife, listening as they stopped, started, stopped again. Then a new sound, scratching, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging down the wood. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just waited, praying for morning. I didn't go near the attic for days after that. The journal stayed down there, locked away with whatever else Elias Crow had left behind. I told myself I'd imagined the hum, the scratching, that it was just fear messing with my head. But the house didn't let me forget. The noises were constant now, day and night. Footsteps in the hall, tapping in the walls, that sour smell seeping into every room. I started sleeping with the lights on, the knife under my pillow. It didn't help. Work became my escape. The library was safe, normal. I'd linger there after my shift, sorting books no one asked for just to avoid going home. But I couldn't hide forever. Every night, I'd pull into the driveway, staring at the house like it was waiting for me. The windows looked darker now, even in daylight, like they were swallowing the sun. Mrs. Carter caught me outside one afternoon, her sharp eyes glinting as she leaned on her cane. "You look like hell, girl," she said. I forced a laugh. "Just tired. Work's been busy." She didn't buy it. "It's the house, ain't it? You're hearing things." I didn't want to admit it, but her stare wore me down. "Yeah, footsteps. Other stuff too. It's getting worse." She nodded like she'd expected it. "Told you it's got a history." Elias Crow didn't just die up there. They said he was clawing at the walls when they found him, fingernails gone, hands bloody. Sheriff back then thought he'd lost his mind. Maybe he did. Or maybe he saw something. I shivered. You really think there's something in there? I think that house don't let go of what's inside it. You be careful here? Don't go poking around where you shouldn't. Too late for that, I thought. I'd already poked. I'd found the journal, the room, the symbols. And now it felt like the house knew. That night I tried to sleep, but the cold came back. It started in my feet, creeping up my legs like ice water, even under the blankets. I sat up, breath fogging in the air, and saw the window, wide open. I hadn't touched it. I stumbled over, slammed it shut, and locked it, my hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the latch. The cold didn't leave. It lingered, heavy, pressing against my back like someone standing too close. I turned, half expecting to see something, someone, in the room. Nothing. Just shadows, thick and still. But then I heard it, a whisper. Low, garbled, like words underwater. It came from the closet. I froze, staring at the door, which was cracked open just an inch. I hadn't left it like that. I grabbed the knife and crept over, my pulse pounding in my ears. The whisper stopped as I got closer, replaced by silence so deep it hurt. I reached out, yanked the door open, and shone my phone's flashlight inside. Empty. Just my clothes, swaying slightly like something had brushed past them. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the bed, knife in hand, listening to the house creak and sigh around me. The footsteps started again around 3 a.m., slow and deliberate, climbing the stairs. 1 step, 2, 3. They stopped outside my door and I held my breath, waiting. The knob rattled just once, then went still. Morning came slow. I checked the door, locked, untouched. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, inches away, separated only by a thin slab of wood. I went back to the attic the next day. I had to. The journal was still down there and I needed answers. I brought a flashlight, the knife, and a baseball bat I'd found in the garage. The trapdoor creaked as I pulled it open, that sour stench hitting me like a slap. I climbed down, heart in my throat, and grabbed the journal off the floor. I read it there in the dim light, surrounded by those chalk symbols. Elias wrote about the shadow over and over, how it came when he called it, how it wouldn't leave. He built the room to trap it, etched the symbols to bind it, but something went wrong. The last few pages were frantic, smeared with ink and what looked like blood. Asterisk, it's in the walls. It's in the floors. It wants out. Asterisk. I closed the book, my hands slick with sweat. The air shifted again, colder, heavier. The hum started, low and steady, vibrating through the stone. I bolted up the ladder, slammed the trapdoor, and locked the attic door behind me. But the hum followed, faint but there, buzzing in my skull. That night I heard it again, the whisper. Not from the closet this time. From under the bed. I didn't look under the bed. I couldn't. The whisper was soft, insistent, like someone muttering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I stayed still, clutching the knife, staring at the ceiling until the first light of dawn crept through the window. When I finally worked up the nerve to check, there was nothing, just dust and shadows. But the mattress felt different after that, heavier somehow, like it remembered the sound. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. The couch became my new bed, parked in front of the TV with the volume low, a constant hum to drown out the house. It didn't work. The footsteps kept coming, louder now, stomping across the floors above me. Sometimes I'd hear them in the walls, too, a dull thudding like something pacing behind the plaster. The sour smell was everywhere, clinging to my clothes, my hair. I couldn't wash it off. I started researching Elias Crow. The library had old newspapers on microfilm, and I spent my lunch breaks digging through them. There wasn't much, just a small obituary from 1927. Asterisk, Elias Crow, 43, found dead in his home on Elm Street. Cause unknown. No surviving family. Asterisk, a follow-up article mentioned the state of the body, hands torn, walls scratched up, but the sheriff had dismissed it as madness. No mention of rituals or shadows. Small towns don't like that kind of story. I asked around at work, casually, hoping someone knew more. One of the older librarians, Margaret, perked up when I mentioned the house. "Oh, that place," she said, adjusting her glasses. "My grandma used to talk about it. Said Crow was a recluse, always muttering to himself. Folks thought he was harmless, till he started buying up odd things, candles, chalk, weird books from out of town. Then he just stopped coming outside." "Did she ever say what happened to him?" I asked. Margaret shrugged. "Just that he died up there. Grandma swore she heard noises from that house after, though. Said it sounded like someone walking around even when it was empty. I didn't tell her I was hearing the same thing. I didn't want her to think I was losing it, but I was starting to feel like I might be. The house got worse that week. The cold spots were constant now, popping up in random places. The kitchen, the hallway, the bathroom mirror fogging up with my breath even when the water was off. The whispers came every night, shifting spots. Under the couch, behind the TV, once from the ceiling right above me. I'd turn on every light, check every corner, but there was never anything there. Just the house, creaking and watching. Friday night, I snapped. I'd been dozing on the couch when the footsteps started again, heavy and fast, circling the living room. I jumped up, bat in hand, shouting into the empty air. "What do you want? Leave me alone." My voice echoed, sharp and desperate, but the steps didn't stop. They got louder, closer, until it felt like they were right behind me. I spun around, nothing. Just the couch, the TV flickering static, the shadows stretching too long across the floor. I ran upstairs, locked myself in the bedroom, and shoved the dresser against the door. The footsteps followed, slower now, climbing the stairs one thud at a time. They stopped outside, and the knob rattled again, longer this time, insistent. I held the bat, tears stinging my eyes, waiting for it to burst in. It didn't. The rattling stopped, and the house went quiet. Too quiet. I stayed there, till morning, back against the wall, bat across my lap. When the sun came up, I checked the hall. The dresser was still in place, the door locked. But there were scratches on the wood, deep, jagged lines, like something had clawed at it all night. I called in sick to work that day. I couldn't face people, couldn't pretend everything was fine. I sat on the couch, staring at the journal I'd brought downstairs. I hadn't opened it since the attic, but I needed to know more. I flipped through it again, past the rituals and the shadow, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. One entry caught my eye, dated a month before Elias died. Asterisk, it grows stronger. The bindings weaken. I hear it in the night, walking where I walk, breathing where I breathe. It wants the house. It wants me. Asterisk farther down, he'd scribbled a list. Salt, iron, fire. Asterisk, these hold it back, but not for long. Asterisk, salt, iron, fire. I didn't know what he meant, but it was something. I drove to the hardware store, bought a bag of rock salt, a crowbar, and a pack of matches. If Elias thought those worked, I'd try anything. Back home, I poured salt along the windowsills and doorways, the grains crunching under my feet. I kept the crowbar by the couch, the matches in my pocket. It felt ridiculous, like a kid playing pretend, but I was desperate. That night, the footsteps didn't come. The whispers didn't either. For the first time in days, the house was still. I slept, fitfully, but I slept. Maybe it worked, I thought. Maybe I'd found a way to keep it quiet. I was wrong. The silence lasted one night. By Sunday, the house was back at it, angrier somehow. The salt I'd spread was scattered across the floor when I woke up, like something had kicked it around. The crowbar was still by the couch, but the matches were gone, vanished from my pocket sometime in the night. I tore the living room apart looking for them, panic clawing at my chest. Nothing. Just that sour smell, stronger now, burning my throat. I didn't leave the house that day. I couldn't. It felt like if I stepped outside, I'd be admitting defeat, letting whatever was here win. So I stayed, pacing the rooms, listening to the creaks and thuds that started up again by noon. The cold spots were worse, too, sharp bursts of ice that hit me out of nowhere, leaving my skin prickling. I kept the crowbar close, gripping it, till my knuckles turned white. Around dusk, I heard something new, a low groan like wood bending under pressure. It came from upstairs, steady and rhythmic, almost alive. I climbed the stairs, crowbar in hand, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The sound was louder on the second floor, coming from one of the spare rooms. The door was shut, though I didn't remember closing it. I pushed it open and the groan stopped. The room was empty, just dust and that sour stench hanging thick in the air. But the floorboards looked wrong, darker, warped, like something heavy had been pressing down on them. I stepped inside and the wood creaked under me louder than it should have. Then I felt it, a cold spot right at my feet so intense it burned. I stumbled back and the groan started again, slower, deeper, echoing through the walls. I ran downstairs, slamming the door behind me. The house felt alive now, pulsing with something I couldn't see. I grabbed the journal again, flipping to that list. Salt, iron, fire. The salt was useless, the matches gone. Iron was all I had left. I clutched the crowbar tighter, telling myself it might work, that Elias had known something I didn't. Night fell and the noises exploded. Footsteps everywhere, above me, below me, in the walls. The whispers were back, overlapping, a chorus of garbled voices that made my head throb. I sat on the couch, crowbar across my lap, staring at the ceiling as it creaked and groaned. Then the lights flickered, once, twice out. The room went dark, just the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the windows. With me too, I couldn't leave it behind even if I wanted to. It was my only clue, my only chance to figure this out. The next few nights were quiet. No tapping, no cold, no hum. I started to hope just a little that I'd outrun it. I found a cheap apartment listing online, a small place in a busy complex. Nothing like that creaky old house. I called the landlord, set up a viewing for the end of the week. Maybe I could start over again, leave all this behind. Then Thursday night it came back. I was in the new motel, half asleep, when the footsteps started. Not outside, inside. Heavy, deliberate, pacing the tiny room. I snapped awake, grabbed the crowbar, and flicked on the light. Nothing. Just me, the bed, the salt lines still intact. But the steps kept going, circling me, loud enough to rattle the cheap nightstand. I shouted, voice cracking. "Leave me alone. I'm not there anymore." The footsteps stopped, and for a second I thought it worked. Then the hum started, louder than ever, vibrating in my chest. The lights flickered and the air turned cold, so cold I could see my breath. Something brushed my arm, light as a feather but heavy with intent. I swung the crowbar, hit nothing, and ran for the door. I didn't stop driving till dawn, till the hum faded and the cold let go. I'm in a new place now, another motel, salt everywhere, lighter in my pocket. The footsteps haven't come back yet, but I know they will. The journal sits on the bed, open to that page. Asterisk, it seeks a vessel. Asterisk, I don't know how to stop it. I don't know if I can. But I hear it now, faint and far off. A tap 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 coming closer. I didn't leave the motel room for 2 days. I couldn't. The tapping followed me, faint but persistent, like a heartbeat in the walls. I'd sit there, back against the headboard, crowbar in one hand, lighter in the other, watching the salt lines for any sign of disturbance. They stayed intact, but it didn't matter. Whatever was out there didn't need to come inside to make me feel it. I stopped calling people. Mrs. Carter, Margaret, even the landlord with the apartment. They'd ask questions I couldn't answer. How do you tell someone you're running from a shadow that walks? That breathes? That wants you? I kept the journal close instead, reading it over and over, looking for something, anything, I'd missed. Elias's words were a mess near the end, scribbled like he was running out of time. One line kept sticking out, asterisk, fire freeze it. Asterisk, I'd thought he meant it freed the house, burned the shadow away. But what if I'd read it wrong? What if it freed it, let it loose, unbound from the house, from the symbols he'd scratched into that hidden room? My stomach sank. Had I made it worse by leaving? Had I set it loose to follow me? Friday night, I decided to test it. I couldn't keep running blind. I needed to know what I was dealing with. I waited till the tapping started, just after 11, sharp and steady against the window. I grabbed the lighter, flicked it on, and held the flame up, staring at the glass. "You want me?" I said, voice shaking. "Come get me." The tapping stopped. The room went still, so quiet I could hear my own breathing. Then the flame flared, bright, hot, spitting sparks, and died. The air turned cold, heavier than ever, pressing me back onto the bed. I flicked the lighter again, but it wouldn't catch, just clicked uselessly in my hand. Something moved in the corner, a flicker of shadow, too tall, too thin, gone when I turned my head. I scrambled for the crowbar, swung it at the empty air. "Stay back," I shouted, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the hum that started up again, louder, angrier. The salt lines shivered, grains shifting like something was pushing against them. I didn't wait to see if they'd hold. I grabbed my bag, the journal, and ran barefoot into the parking lot. The night was warm, but the cold chased me, clinging to my skin. I drove fast, no direction, just away. The hum faded after a few miles, but I didn't stop till the gas light blinked on. I pulled into a truck stop, hands trembling as I filled the tank, eyes darting to every shadow. Nothing came. Not then. I found another motel by morning, a run-down place off the highway. I checked in, spread salt thicker than ever, and sat with the journal again. I needed a plan. Elias had bound it once. Maybe I could too. The symbols in that room, the chalk circles, they'd held it for years, till he messed up. If I could recreate them, maybe I could trap it again, lock it back in the house. I spent the day sketching what I remembered, shaky lines on motel stationery. Circles within circles, jagged runes I couldn't read but copied anyway. I didn't know if they'd work, didn't know what they meant, but it was all I had. I bought chalk at a gas station along with more salt and a cheap iron skillet. Iron wounds it, Elias had said. I'd use anything I could. That night, I drew the symbols on the motel floor, chalk dust coating my fingers. I poured salt in the gaps, set the skillet in the center, and waited. The tapping came back, softer now, almost curious, circling the room. I held the crowbar, watching the shadows, daring it to try me. The hum started, but it was faint, hesitant, like it wasn't sure what I'd done. The night passed slow. The tapping stopped around 3 a.m., the hum fading with it. The salt stayed put, the symbols intact. I didn't sleep, just stared at my makeshift circle, heart pounding, waiting for a sign. Morning came and the room felt lighter. Not safe, but less heavy. Like I'd pushed it back just a little. I kept moving after that, town to town, motel to motel. Every night, I'd draw the symbols, spread the salt, set the skillet out. It worked mostly. The tapping would come, the hum sometimes, but they didn't get close. The cold stayed outside, the footsteps muffled, like they couldn't find me through the chalk. But it wasn't gone. I'd see it sometimes, a shadow in the corner of my eye, too tall, too thin, slipping away when I looked. I'd feel it in the air, that sour rot creeping back, faint but there. The journal stayed with me, my only guide, and I kept reading, kept searching. One entry near the end gave me pause. Asterisk, it cannot be killed, only bound. The house is its cage and I its keeper. Asterisk, the house. I'd left it behind, abandoned it to whatever was inside. Had that been the mistake? Had I broken the cage when I ran? I didn't know. But I couldn't go back, not yet. I wasn't ready to face it there where it was strongest. Last night, though, something changed. I was in a new motel, symbols drawn, salt down, when the tapping started, louder, faster, insistent. The hum came with it, shaking the walls, and the salt shifted, lines breaking. I grabbed the crowbar, shouted at it to stop, but the air turned cold and the lights went out. Something heavy hit the floor right in the circle and I heard it, a whisper, clear this time, mine. I didn't wait. I ran again, drove, till the sun came up. I'm here now in another room, chalk in hand. The symbols are drawn, the salt's thick, but I can hear it already, tap tap tap, closer than before. I'm running out of places to go. Every motel looks the same now, stained carpets, buzzing lights, that faint mildew smell I used to hate but barely notice anymore. I've got the routine down. Check in, draw the symbols, spread the salt, set the skillet out, wait. It's kept me alive, kept it at bay, but it's getting stronger. The tapping's louder, the hum's deeper, and the cold seeps through the chalk like it's figuring me out. I don't sleep much. When I do, it's in fits, waking to every creak, every shift in the air. Last night, I dreamed of the house, of standing in that hidden room, the chalk symbols glowing red, the journal open on the table. Elias was there, or what was left of him, hands bloody, eyes black, staring at me. You let it out, he said, voice like gravel. You have to put it back. I woke up gasping, the crowbar slipping from my hand, the room ice cold. I can't shake the dream. It stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. What if he's right? What if leaving the house was the mistake, not just for me but for whatever's next? I keep thinking about that line, asterisk, the house is its cage. Asterisk, if it's loose because of me, if it's hunting because I ran, then maybe I'm the one who has to fix it. I've been reading the journal non-stop, looking for a way to bind it again. Elias wrote about the symbols, how they hold the shadow, how they're tied to the house itself. He built that room, carved the stone, poured his blood into it to keep it locked. The last page mentions a ritual. Asterisk, salt to guard, iron to wound, fire to seal. The vessel must return. Asterisk, the vessel. Me. The house. I don't know, but it's the closest thing I've got to a plan. I decided today, I'm going back. Not to live, not to fight, just to end this. I've got the chalk, the salt, the skillet, the lighter. I'll redraw the symbols in that room, burn the journal if I have to, seal whatever's left. If it wants me, it can have the house instead. I don't know if it'll work, don't know if I'll walk out, but I can't keep running. It's wearing me down and I'm tired of the tapping, the cold, the whispers that won't stop. I drove back to Harrow Creek this afternoon, the road stretching out like a bad memory. The town looked the same, quiet, sleepy, oblivious. I passed Mrs. Carter's house, saw her on the porch, but I didn't stop. She tried to talk me out of it and I didn't have the energy to argue. The house came into view around the bend, squat and dark against the gray sky. The windows were black, the porch sagging worse than I remembered. It didn't look empty. It looked alive. I parked in the driveway, grabbed my bag and stepped out. The air was thick, that sour rot hitting me like a wall. The front door was ajar. Had I left it like that? And the floorboards creaked as I stepped inside. Everything was where I'd left it. Boxes half-packed, couch askew, salt scattered across the floor. But the house felt different, heavier, like it had been waiting. I didn't waste time. I climbed to the attic, crowbar in one hand, bag in the other. The trapdoor was still there, shut tight, but the air hummed faintly, vibrating through the wood. I pulled it open and the stench poured out, sour, metallic, alive. The ladder creaked as I went down, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The room was the same, stone walls, chalk symbols, that warped table. But the air was colder, the hum louder, buzzing in my teeth. I set to work, redrawing the symbols where they'd faded, pouring salt in thick lines, setting the skillet in the center. My hands shook, chalk dust sticking to my sweat, but I kept going. The hum grew, the cold pressing in, and I heard it, footsteps, heavy and slow, circling the attic above me. I didn't look up. I couldn't. When the symbols were done, I pulled out the journal, opened it to the ritual page, and lit the lighter. The flame caught fast, licking at the brittle paper. "Back where you belong," I said, voice steady as I could make it, and dropped the burning journal onto the skillet. The fire flared, bright and hot, smoke curling up in thick spirals. The hum turned to a roar, the footsteps pounding overhead, and the air went frigid, stealing my breath. I backed toward the ladder, crowbar raised, watching the flames. The smoke twisted, forming shapes, long, thin, wrong, and I swear I saw it, a shadow taller than the room rising from the table. It didn't move, just stood there, blacker than black, as the fire ate the journal. The footsteps stopped, the hum faltered, and the cold snapped back, like a rubber band breaking. I climbed out, slammed the trapdoor, and ran. Down the stairs, out the door, into the yard. The house groaned behind me, a deep, wounded sound, but I didn't look back. I got in my car, drove straight out of town, and didn't stop till the tank was near empty. I'm at another motel now, miles away, salt down, skillet by the bed. The tapping hasn't come back. The hum's gone. The cold's gone. But I don't feel safe. I keep hearing that groan, keep seeing that shadow in the smoke. Did I bind it? Did I free it? I don't know. And last night as I drifted off, I swear I felt the bed dip, just slightly, like something sat down beside me. I didn't sleep after that. How could I? The bed dipping wasn't a dream. I felt it, the mattress sagging under a weight that wasn't mine. I snapped the light on, crowbar in hand, but the room was empty. Just me, the salt lines, the skillet still warm from the house. The air was still, no tapping, no hum, but that didn't mean anything. It was here. I knew it. I stayed up till dawn, sitting on the floor, back to the wall, watching the bed like it might move again. It didn't. The salt stayed put, the symbols held, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something. The journal was gone, burned to ash in that hidden room, and with it, any chance of understanding what I'd done. Had I locked it back in the house? Or had I just pissed it off? Morning came slow, gray light creeping through the blinds. I packed my stuff, crowbar, skillet, bag of salt, and checked out. I didn't know where to go, just that I couldn't stay still. I drove north, winding through back roads, till I hit a small city with a decent-sized library. If the journal was gone, maybe I could find something else. Old books, records, anything about Elias Crow or rituals like his. The library was quiet, all polished wood and soft carpet. I found a corner with a computer and started searching. Elias Crow, Harrow Creek, got me nothing but that same obituary I'd seen before. I tried occult rituals 1920s, shadow entities, binding spells. Pages of garbage, conspiracy blogs, fake grimoires, ghost hunter forums. Nothing solid. I was about to give up when I stumbled on a scanned book, some obscure history of rural occultists, published in the 70s. One chapter mentioned a reclusive figure in Harrow Creek, unnamed, who'd meddled with forces beyond his ken and died raving about a dark presence. It fit Elias too well to be coincidence. The book didn't say much else, just that the man's house was shunned after, that locals swore it was cursed. No rituals, no symbols, no how-to guide for trapping shadows. But it confirmed what I'd feared. Whatever Elias called up wasn't small, wasn't simple. And I'd burned the only thing that might have explained how to stop it. I left the library with a headache and a sinking feeling. The day stretched out, empty and aimless, so I found another motel, set up my defenses, salt, symbols, skillet, and waited. Night came, and with it, the quiet. No tapping, no footsteps, no cold. It should have been a relief, but it wasn't. It felt like the calm before something worse. I was right. Around 2 a.m. the bed creaked, not a dip this time, but a groan like something heavy was shifting on it. I grabbed the crowbar, flicked the light on. Nothing. The mattress looked normal, sheets flat, but the air was wrong, thick, sour, alive. I stepped closer, and the creaking started again, slow and deliberate, like someone sitting up. I swung the crowbar, hit the bed hard enough to split the frame. The sound stopped, but the sour smell got stronger, choking me. I didn't sleep again. I sat by the door, crowbar across my lap, listening to the room breathe around me. The salt lines shivered once, just a flicker, but held. Morning came, and I checked the bed. Nothing broken, no marks like I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. I could still feel that weight, still smell that rot. I'm back on the road now, driving nowhere, living motel to motel. The symbols work, mostly keep it at a distance, keep it quiet. But it's still here. I'll catch a shadow in the mirror, too tall, too thin, gone when I turn. I'll feel the bed shift, hear a whisper I can't make out. It's patient, waiting, wearing me down. I keep thinking about the house. Did I seal it there or did I break it free? The fire was supposed to bind it, but what if it didn't? What if it's loose now, tethered to me instead? Elias wrote about a vessel, about returning. Maybe that's what it wants, me back in that room, finishing what he started. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm strong enough. But last night, as I sat in this latest motel, salt crunching under my boots, I heard it again. A low hum, faint but growing, coming from the walls. And then, clear as anything, a whisper, home, is calling me back. And I don't think I can run much longer. I lasted 3 more days before I gave in. 3 days of driving, of motels, of salt and symbols, and that hum chasing me down every highway. It was everywhere now, louder in the car, sharper in the rooms, rattling my bones. The whispers came with it, soft and constant, always the same word, home. It wasn't a question. It was a command. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My hands shook too much to hold a coffee cup. My eyes burned from staring at shadows that moved when I blinked. The crowbar stayed in my lap, the skillet by my side, but they felt useless now. Whatever this was, it wasn't scared of iron anymore. It was done playing. Last night sealed it. I was in a motel off some nowhere road, symbols chalked on the floor, salt thick as snow. The hum started at midnight, steady and deep, shaking the walls. The bed creaked, the air turned cold, and the whispers grew, overlapping, insistent, filling my head. I shouted at it, swung the crowbar, but it didn't stop. The lights flickered, and the salt lines broke, grains scattering like something kicked them apart. Then the bed moved, not a dip, not a creak, but a lurch, sliding an inch across the floor. I didn't wait. I grabbed my stuff and ran, drove, till dawn with the hum buzzing in my ears. I knew then I couldn't outrun it. It wasn't letting me go. The house was where it started, where Elias bound it, where I'd burned the journal. If there was an end to this, it was there. I had to go back. I turned the car around this morning, headed south toward Harrow Creek. The hum quieted as I drove, like it knew I'd given up fighting. My stomach churned, my hands gripped the wheel, till they ached, but I kept going. I stopped once at a gas station to buy more salt, a new lighter, anything I could use. The clerk asked if I was okay. I must have looked like hell, but I just nodded and left. The house came into view by late afternoon, same as before, dark, sagging, alive. The windows glowed faintly, even in daylight, like they were watching me pull into the driveway. I sat there a minute, engine idling, staring at it. The air was thick again, that sour rot seeping through the car vents. I cut the engine, grabbed my bag, crowbar, skillet, salt, lighter, and stepped out. The front door was still ajar, creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, the house was a tomb, dusty, still heavy with that smell. My stuff was untouched, frozen in time since I'd run. The floorboards groaned under me, louder than before, like they remembered. I didn't stop to think. I climbed to the attic, heart pounding, every step echoing in the silence. The trapdoor was open. I hadn't left it like that. I'd slammed it shut after the fire. The hum spilled out, low and steady, pulling me down. I climbed into the hidden room, flashlight shaking in my hand. The chalk symbols were still there, smudged but intact, the skillet black with ash from the journal. The air was ice cold, the sour stench so thick I gagged. I set to work fast, redrew the symbols, poured salt in heavy lines, placed the skillet back in the center. The hum grew, the footsteps started, above me, around me, everywhere. I pulled out the lighter, flicked it on, and held it up. "You want me?" I said, voice cracking. "Take the house instead." The flame flared, hot and bright, and I tossed it onto the skillet. The ash caught, sparking, smoking, and the room erupted. The hum turned to a scream, high and piercing, shaking the stone. The footsteps pounded, fast and frantic, circling me. The air went frigid, and I saw it, really saw it, rising from the smoke. A shadow, tall, thin, faceless, bending toward me. I swung the crowbar, hit nothing but air, and it lunged, cold, heavy, slamming me against the wall. My breath froze in my chest, my vision blurred, and I felt it, fingers long and sharp, digging into my shoulders. The scream peaked, the fire roared, and the symbols glowed, red-hot, searing the floor. Then it stopped. The shadow vanished, the cold snapped away, the hum died. I fell to my knees, gasping, the room silent except for the crackle of the dying fire. The skillet smoked, the symbols dimmed, and the house, settled. It felt empty, hollow, like something had left. I didn't wait to find out what. I climbed out, ran downstairs, and bolted to my car. The house loomed behind me, quiet now, but I didn't trust it. I drove hard, didn't stop, till I was 2 counties over, till the sour smell faded and the hum was a memory. I'm in a new motel tonight, salt down, crowbar close. The bed hasn't moved, the air's warm, the silence real. But I keep hearing it, a faint tap tap tap, far off like it's waiting. I don't know if I bound it. I don't know if it's gone. All I know is I felt those fingers, saw that shadow, and it knew me. I'm not going back. Not ever. It's been a week since I left the house for good. I'm still here in this motel, living out of my car and a duffel bag I grabbed from a thrift store. The salt's spread thick, the skillets by the bed, the crowbar's never out of reach. I don't draw the symbols anymore. Don't need to, or maybe I'm too scared to try. The tapping hasn't come back, the hum's gone, the cold stayed away. But I don't feel free. I found an apartment yesterday, a small place in a noisy complex full of kids and barking dogs. It's nothing like the house. No creaks, no history, no shadows. I signed the lease this morning, moved in with what little I've got. The walls are thin, the neighbors loud, but it's alive in a way the house never was. I thought it'd help, thought the noise would drown out the quiet I've come to dread. It doesn't. I keep replaying that night in the hidden room, the shadow, the scream, those fingers digging into me. I can still feel them, cold and sharp, like they left a mark I can't see. The fire burned, the symbols glowed, and it stopped, but did it end? Elias said it couldn't be killed, only bound. I thought I'd locked it back in the house, but what if I didn't? What if it's still out there waiting? I went back to the library today, the one in the city where I'd found that occultist book. I needed something, proof, answers, anything to settle my nerves. I dug through more records, old newspapers, even town hall archives from Harrow Creek. There was nothing new on Elias, just the same scraps. Dead in the attic, hands bloody, house cursed. But one article, buried in a 1930s paper, caught my eye, a small blurb about Elm Street. Asterisk, vacant home sold again. New tenants report unease, leave within months. Locals call it Crow's Folly. Asterisk, it's still there. People still move in, still run. Whatever I did, it didn't stop that. Maybe it's weaker now, maybe it's trapped, but it's not gone. And me, I'm not sure I got away clean. The bed in my new place creaked last night, just once, soft and quick. I told myself it was the frame, the cheap springs settling. I didn't check. I couldn't. I called Mrs. Carter this afternoon, first time since I left. She picked up on the third ring, voice raspy but steady. "You're alive," she said, like she hadn't been sure. "Yeah," I said. "I went back. Tried to fix it." She was quiet a minute. "Did you?" "I don't know. It's quiet now, but I don't know." "Quiet don't mean gone," she said. "You be careful, girl. That house don't forget." I hung up after that, her words looping in my head. She's right, it doesn't forget. And maybe it doesn't forgive either. I keep the salt handy, the crowbar by the door, the skillet on the nightstand. I don't sleep much, just doze with the lights on, listening to the neighbors argue and the dogs bark. It's better than silence. Tonight, I'm sitting on the couch, a secondhand thing that smells like cigarette smoke, writing this down. I don't know why. Maybe I need to get it out, make it real so I don't feel so crazy. Maybe I'm warning whoever comes next. The house is still out there, waiting on Elm Street, creaking and humming and watching. If you move in, if you hear the footsteps, don't stay. Don't poke around. Don't burn anything. I thought I'd end this with some big revelation, some moment of peace. I don't have that. I've got a new place, a new job starting Monday, stocking shelves at a grocery store, nothing fancy, and a life that's supposed to feel normal. But it doesn't. I keep waiting for the tap tap tap, keep feeling the bed shift, keep smelling that sour rot in the back of my throat. It's quiet now, past midnight, the complex settling down. I'll try to sleep soon, try to believe it's over. But as I sit here, pen scratching paper, I hear it, faint, far off, almost nothing. The creak. Not the couch, not the floor. The bed across the room, groaning soft and slow, like something sitting there waiting. I won't look. I won't move. I'll just wait till morning, till the light chases it away. But I know it's there. And I know it's not done with me.